taken of spark plugs. This particular test here is the Engine Performance 2 Test 10. It's going to sound like you're beating a dead horse, but it's not a bad idea to burn this stuff in so you remember. When you're talking about the difference in gasoline and stuff like that, and we've got, this is, you know, all the same kind of stuff we ran into in emissions a while back, but what is RVP? Well, this first question says winter blend gasoline blank. A would be has a higher RVP. What is RVP? Anybody remember what RVP is from the previous time we went through these questions?
Does the P stand for petroleum?
No, believe it or not, it stands for pressure. It's Reid vapor pressure is what that is. That's the volatility thing of it. That's not right. That's not the right answer, but that's what RVP stands for. B can cause engine drivability problems if used during warm weather. C vaporizes more easily than summer blend gasoline, or D all of the above.
C.
Actually, though, they're all right except you can't just answer one of those A, B, or C and get it right, basically. That's what I meant to say. But vaporizes more easily is the Reid vapor pressure thing, and they want it to vaporize more easily because, hey, yay man, yeah. Let's see what you got here. They want it to vaporize more easily because the cold weather is going to make it try to condense. Yeah, these right here are the ones, and out there on the core table sits the other ones. These are the right ones here. Okay. Yeah. That'll work. All right, you got it here. Be careful what you say because this is going on YouTube.
No.
All right. So here in a second. Put that one on my bench. All right. But anyway,
D.
yeah, that one there is D. It's delta. It's all the above. But we used to measure Reid vapor pressure when I was at the Ford dealership, and we would actually put get what looked like a coffee cup, and it had a little cover over it, and there was a little reservoir down in there that would be submerged in the hot water, and you cap it off with some gasoline in it that you were testing, and you would put a little pressure gauge in there, and with it at 160 degree water would heat that thing up, and over a period of time it's supposed to gain X number of pounds of pressure. It's an unusual thing. It was a gasoline testing kit that we had, and that's what we were testing at. No, Technician A says spark, knock, ping, and detonation are different names for abnormal combustion. Technician B says any abnormal combustion raises the temperature and pressure inside the combustion chamber and can cause severe engine damage. Remember what I was talking about? Let's see. What I was talking about the other day is whenever you squeeze that the air-fuel mix within the combustion chamber, you've almost got it squeezed enough to where it'll light off on its own, and the spark basically just tips it over the line so it fires up and it burns. If it gets up above a certain temperature before the spark plug even fires, like the engine's too hot or you got too much compression because you got your carbon buildup on the inside of the, on the head and on the piston, anything that takes up space in a combustion chamber is going to make it have higher compression, and higher compression can make it fire before it's supposed to. And whenever that fire happens, if it hits the piston while it's coming up, it makes a ringing noise, and it rings the piston kind of like a bell. That's what pinging and spark knock is. I don't really have a way. I guess I probably could advance the ignition timing on that Bronco and drive this thing a little and get you guys to hear a ping. But you need to, that's not as much of an issue as it used to be, though, to tell you the truth. Did any of you guys know what dieseling is? We ever talk about dieseling, run-on? You know what that is? You ever heard of that in regards to an engine? When you turn it off, it tries to keep running. It goes, you ever heard one do that? You're old enough to where I felt like you'd probably heard it. But you switch it off and it tries to keep running. And it really will. You turn off the ignition, it goes, yeah, he's an old man, he's 32. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to, but I'm going to get this doggone piece of this clip from that movie that Steve Gutenberg made called Don't Tell Her It's Me, where that girl parked that darned old Buick in front of that 2-story house, and she switched it off, and she got out and she went in the house, and it sat there dieseling and running on and spitting out smoke the whole time, even though she had switched off. She went in that house upstairs looking for somebody, and when she came back down, it was still dieseling. She just turned the key back on and drove off on it. But that's what dieseling is. Now, that usually was on a carbureted engine, you'd find it one dieseling. If it gets hot enough in there, and the reason I'm saying that, you got glowing coals of carbon in there, and the thing is still pulling fuel in through the carburetor, and it's got this, these pistons is going up and down, and it's actually the little glowing coals, and the heat of that carbon enables it to keep trying to fire just erratically, only it's not firing, you know, it's not trying to actually run where it can pull anything, but it's just enough to where it'll keep going. It's really ugly sounding. But that, I ran into that on a 91 Explorer with fuel injection. They said when you shut it off, it would diesel, and that sounded to me like a physical impossibility, because when you turn it off, you're killing the ignition and the fuel. On that particular one, though, the EEC power relay was stuck closed. And because the EEC power relay was stuck closed, the injectors were still fired up, the engine controller was still fired up. I had turned off the ignition, which killed the coil on that one, but it still was reading the crank, and it was still squirting fuel, and it was still trying to run. And that whole thing was because of a stuck EEC power relay. But when I first saw that thing do that, it boggled my mind. I couldn't figure out how it's possible. All right. Technician A says the research octane number is higher than the motor octane number. Technician B says the octane rating posted on fuel pumps is the average of the two rating, and that's going to be C. You've seen that. You may have even seen that, or it'll say, you know, R plus M, you know, squared or something like that. You ever seen that on gas pump? That's what that means, research and motor. They do them both. They average them together, and that's what the number is on that, you know. Let's see, Technician A says at high altitudes engines produce lower power. Anybody that's driven a carbureted vehicle at a high altitude will realize just how true that is, because the thing feels like you're plumb ashamed of it, and it won't hardly pull your hat off. It's terrible. It's not as bad on a fuel injected engine because they got altitude modification with using checking barrel pressure. Technician B says most engine control systems can compensate the air-fuel mixture changes in altitude. It's not just air-fuel though. The ignition timing has got to be changed too. You don't have as much oxygen. It's not going to burn as fast, so you're going to have to advance the ignition timing a little more, like something like 8 degrees across the board when you're at a higher altitude above 4,000 feet. So anyway, which method of blending ethanol with gasoline is the most accurate? I know you guys have really blended a lot of ethanol with gasoline. That's going to be the inline. How many of you guys know when you go to the gas pump over here and you've got 93 octane, 89, and then your 87, right? Did you know that when you pump the 89, all it's doing is blending the other two? You don't have a separate tank for 89. It blends the other two. Here's a little mystery, fuel related. That gas station that's about halfway between here and Enterprise has got a whole bunch of pumps out there, right? And you know the hoses hang down from relay. You know how they do nowadays. And this guy used to stop there in the morning, this guy that I knew that would come driving over here, and he would be real early in the morning. He always came to work real early. And so about the time they opened up, he would stop, and he would go in there and he'd pay for some gas. And when they turned on the pump, it would immediately count up to about 6 or 8 or 10 cents before he'd even pull the trigger. Why? No, I tell you, think about it. I thought about it and I told him what was going on. He'd go in there and grouse about it, but they'd say, hey, what can we do about that, you know? And what was happening was some of these good old boys would come by there at night when the gas station was closed, and they would go to all those pumps and drain the hoses into their truck. And if you drain, gosh, you got 9 pumps. If you drain 3 hoses from 9 pumps, you're getting 2 or 3 gallons. And they were stealing gas like that. And so the person that stopped in the morning when it had to fill the hose up, you know, ding, 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 it goes up to about 10 cents. So he had to pay to fill the hose up, you know, and they were actually getting paid for the gas because the customers would get it. And that was something that you figure it out. You know, it's out in the country. There's nobody watching it at night. When nobody's around, they slink over there on their pickup trucks or whoever, you know, whatever. I don't know who was doing it, but if somebody was doing it. What can be used to measure the alcohol content in gasoline? Can you use a graduated cylinder, an electronic tester, a scan tool, or either A or B? Could you describe how you do it with a graduated cylinder? Didn't you do that last semester, or no?
I didn't do it, but don't you just pour it in there and let it...
Well, there's a couple of different ways people like to do it, but I like to take this you can get, you ever seen a rain gauge? It's just straight up and down glass thing. It's sort of like a test tube. And if you mark it with 10 equal graduations, you use your tape measure to do it. And then you fill it up to 90 with gas, and then you fill it up the rest of the way with water, and then you cap that off with your cork or whatever so nothing comes out, and you shake it up. The water's going to go to the bottom, right? All right. You're going to see 10% water there. However much you gain is how much is in there. And it's really important to do that, because some people will go by the E85 and grab the yellow hose and put it in their car, not thinking about what they're doing, and they'll put a bunch of alcohol, E85 gasoline there, which is 85% alcohol, and that car won't run over a toot with that, unless it's flex fuel, and then it will. But anyway, that's how you do it. And I've got a graduated cylinder in there, if you don't fool with that. I've got some denatured alcohol. I usually mix it with the gas, and so you can see what it looks like, you know. The denatured alcohol, though, when you mix it with the gas, it kind of makes the gas look cloudy, and so it's sort of a, you can tell. This won't do that. But anyway, E85. And besides that, let me tell you this. I have seen people work on a vehicle and just burn a lot of their time when all that was wrong with it was the fuel. Wrong fuel. And they work. I knew a guy doing that. One time I saw a guy work for about 2.5 hours on one because they had put premium gas in it, and it was set up to run on 87 octane. It was like a 92 Bronco. Another time, I worked on one for most of a dadgum week off and on while I was in and amongst other cars. It was a rental car, and when you'd crank it up cold, it barely would run, but if you could keep it alive by patting the gas and all, and you ever got it to warm up, it'd run good, but it would smoke a little bit, and when you drove it, it would fly. I mean, it would just run like a spotted ape. And when I checked the compression, because the field service engineer just happened to be walking around the dealership, I was talking to him about it. He says, check the compression, see what it is. It's about 160 on a Taurus. And I checked it had 210 pounds of compression over every cylinder. And what I found out was whoever rented that car last put a bunch of diesel in it. And I fooled with that thing for a while. But when I put your hand in there and wave it around until it's all dry, if you smell diesel, you got a pretty good idea. Somebody out there?
Yeah.
Tell them to come.
Come here. Come on in.
Come here. Hey, I'm gonna be here a while. What you need?
My mother's called. When can I get it looked at?
Yeah, on the. And you had talked about on that Focus or what? What you talking about?
Nah, it's a red tar.
Oh yeah, I knew we talked about it the other day, but I forgot what we said about it.
You ain't gonna be able to do it. Then
I mean, what was it you were talking about?
she needs tie rod is.
Oh yeah, that's next semester. I can probably do that, but not this semester. You know.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Alrighty. But let's see. E85 is what?
85% ethanol. 50%
Yeah.
gasoline.
And what's the difference between a flex fuel vehicle and a vehicle that's not flex fuel?
Aren't the fuel injectors better or something?
They are. That's a good answer. And also the fuel pump's better. The fuel lines are better. The fuel tank is usually better. But you've also got a flex fuel sensor on some of them. But on some of them, they've done away with a flex fuel sensor, and they just let the oxygen sensors make them help them determine. There's an algorithm they typed in. They started doing that. Those flex fuel sensors are expensive. You remember the one we had, the flex fuel sensor we had to put on the other day because it was misreporting the amount of alcohol and it was making it where it wouldn't start sometime, overfueling it, wetting the plugs and all that. That sensor was $700 if you buy it from the GM dealer. It was terrible. But they had to have it. Flex fuel vehicle can be identified how?
D.
That's number 8. Except, well, yeah, we've got some flex fuel vehicles here that we use, that we do college inspections on. Have you guys seen any of our vehicles that said flex fuel on them? None of them have badges on them, do they? They don't, do they? Huh?
Isn't it Impala one of them?
Huh?
That Impala that we always inspect?
Well, no, that one, well, I need to look into that. It may be, but I knew the little Dodge Stratus that we did the other day, it's flex fuel. The Dodge Caravan that you put those shocks on the back, it's flex fuel. And that Crown Victoria, that silver one that you put that part on, it's a flex fuel. And we got several flex fuel vehicles, but they don't say nothing on the car anywhere telling you they're flex fuel. So Is yours flex fuel? Or do you know?
Mine?
Your Buick, yeah.
Oh.
Okay. All right. But anyway, for some reason I was thinking it might be. When refueling a compressed natural gas vehicle, why is it recommended the tank be filled to a high pressure?
Hey.
Yeah, you're right. You can go further. That's not really all that complicated, is it? What color is diesel fuel dyed if it's for off-road use only? It's red. And I always like to say this when I was working on those Power Stroke diesel trucks. Whenever somebody'd come in and they'd be grousing about the way it ran, I'd take the top off that big old fuel filter. If I saw red diesel in there, I'd put it back on and say, take the truck and drive it and run through at least 2 or 3 tanks of regular diesel fuel through it that's not red, and then we'll talk about this. But I wouldn't do anything to it because there's just too much that can go wrong. That fuel is not set up to meet the really stringent standards. It's untaxed, but I tell you who the worst offenders are these people that county ambulances. They can actually, break that rule without getting in trouble. Technician A says the use of premium high-octane gasoline in an engine designed to use regular grade gasoline will increase engine power. Is he right or is he wrong? Technician B says flexible fuel vehicles are designed to operate on gasoline or gasoline ethanol blends up to 85%. Yeah, that guy's right about that. Technician A says gasoline should always be purchased from a busy station and the vehicle's tank should not be overfilled. Technician B says oxygenated fuels contain extra oxygen to help increase CO exhaust emissions. Which technician is correct?
I don't know about B, but I'd say A.
Yeah, A's right about that. It's a good idea to do that. Which of these is added to a fuel for testing purposes to avoid problems with the variation of gasoline? That's going to be something, unless you read the chapter, Endolene. And whenever I see that word, it reminds me of when that guy at Texaco Research handed me that bottle of toluene to pour in my car when I ran out of gas, And it ran really good with that stuff in it. One should avoid overfilling the fuel tank because
B.
car charcoal canister may get saturated. Let me ask you this: how does it act when the car charcoal canister is saturated? What kind of symptom do you have?
Doesn't it idle really crappily?
Yeah, without warning. Like this one lady called me about her Windstar, and she said, and when I was at the dealership, and she said, I'll be sitting here idling, and all of a sudden it will just surge ahead and almost run into the car in front of me all by itself. And I said, well, do you pack the gas tank? And she says, yeah, usually I do. And I said, well, don't do that and see if that problem goes away. Because if it's not badly saturated, it'll eventually clear itself out.
With charcoal canisters or carbon canisters, that's only on fuel injection, right?
That's actually where there's a vapor line that travels from the gas tank into this carbon canister and stores fuel vapors.
I'm saying that's only on fuel injected cars, though.
No, you got them on carbureted cars too.
Oh, okay.
And they'll make a carbureted car run rich and cause all the same kind of issues. However, that's a good thing you said that. Carbureted vehicles, you only are getting canister purge when you're in the throttle. On these newer ones that are OBD2, they're liable to start purging the canister anytime without warning. They're going to purge it more when the engine's cold because you can handle that extra vapor. But it may be sitting here idling at a stop sign when it starts doing it. If it pulls a bunch of gas in there, what happens? It pulls a bunch of gas in there and the engine goes, it get too much gas, right? And then whenever it does that, the engine controller says, we almost died. We got to rev the engine up with the idle air control so it don't stall. Because it's looking for a target idle. So it overshoots, and now they're sitting here with their foot gently on the brake, and all of a sudden, when it overshoots, the engine goes, boom, and it goes back. That's the kind of garbage that goes on there. And then, some people, whenever and you were actually saying that, he said that was the weirdest thing that Brian was talking about. When they gas up that white when he drives, you said it would always do crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Right after you gas it up, and sometimes it wouldn't even start for 5 minutes or something. And
Still does it. I haven't fixed the problem yet.
yeah, is it still doing it?
Yeah.
So when you gas up, you're going to be sitting there for a while.
Yeah.
Every
I
time.
Just go inside and wait.
Okay. We need to look at that, Brian. All right. Okay, let me see. One should avoid overfilling the fuel tank because it may get saturated. Extra fuel will go into the expansion area of the tank. You know, well, yes and no, but you basically don't want to saturate the carbon canister. But you know, these tanks have all, you see that tank up there, the way I got it drawn on that picture? You see the white part and how that tank has got a sort of a rise? That is the expansion part of the tank. You don't want the tank to be completely full all the way up to where there's no air in it at all. That's just a bad way, you know. They got it fixed up that. Using E85 can result in what? Who knows?
D.
Anybody else got anything to allow on that? Reduced fuel economy. You're not going to get a kind of fuel economy off E85. It's cheaper, but you're not going to get the kind of fuel economy off that you are regular gas. Number 16, using the R plus M divided by 2 rating method, most regular gasoline today is, yeah, it's 87, but I guarantee you just about everywhere you can find 87 octane, you can find 89 and 93 available too. I was coming back from Texas one time on a little Volkswagen Bug I had, and I found myself going across that bridge that's 18 miles long, going across the Atchafalaya Basin, and I realized I was kind of low on gas, and I said, man, I hope I don't run out. And so I took an exit where it said there was some gas, and I went down that road. I went right by an RV park. I didn't know they had gas there, but I kept going down that road, and I wound up way off out there in the marsh somewhere where there's alligators crossing the road and everything, and I stopped in there, and there was a gas station that had 1 gas pump, and it was 75 cents a gallon. And I'll say, I'll be doggone if I'm gonna pay 75 cents a gallon for gas. That's stupid. Well, everybody else was charging 45 cents. But because they were so far out in the marsh, they were charging 75 cents a gallon, which was highway robbery. All right.
Yeah, but if you need gas, you're paying for it.
No, I turned around and went back and found that other place. All right. So, but anyway, and at that time, that sounded awful. Abnormal combustion, also called detonation or spark knock, increases both the temperature and what inside the combustion chamber?
Whether with either carbon or pressure.
Pressure. It's going to be pressure. Now, carbon can be caused by using 93 octane gas. Burns slower, they'll leave some in there, and it's going to build up and make carbon. And that's a sort of a, you know, I won't do it on every single engine, but we'll on a lot of them. Then it'll get to where you can't burn anything but 93 because it'll ping if you put anything else in there. ExxonMobil has developed a process for converting methanol into gasoline in a process called,
Okay.
yeah, that's methanol to gasoline, MTG. Which of these procedures is used to convert coal to liquid fuel, creates a synthetic crude called syncrude, which is then refined to produce gasoline or diesel fuel?
Cracking.
No, that's direct method. That's actually direct method. Now, cracking is what happens in the catalytic cracking unit. They got this big old unit out there that's got all of these sort of reservoirs all the way down through it. It's a big, shit looks like a big capsule or a big bottle, but it's gigantic. And they put a bunch of fuel in there and they heat it up to like 1200 degrees, or actually crude oil. And when it cracks, it actually separates into its separate elements, and the lighter elements are stored in the top chambers, and the heavier elements like your tar and your grease and all are stored in the bottom. And so that's what cracking's all about. Those are catalytic cracking units, and that's where cracking is even a word they put there. In P-Series alternative fuel is patented by Princeton University and is non-petroleum based fuel suitable for use in blank vehicles or any vehicle designed to operate on E85. And that's a flexible fuel vehicle. Although I'm not driving to Princeton to fill up my gas tank, I'm sorry. All right.
What was 4 and 5?
Why weren't you paying attention? What happened?
Wasn't listening, yes.
What?
4 was C and 5 was D.
All right. Technician A says gasoline is a complex blend of hydrocarbons. We kind of knew that, didn't we? Technician B says gasoline is blended for seasonal usage to achieve the correct volatility for easy starting and maximum fuel economy. Which technician is correct? That's C. Now, where would that be? Why would that be an issue? What if somebody parked their vehicle, maybe they even put a little bit of fuel stabilizer in it or something. They parked their vehicle all summer long into the fall, and now it's really cold outside and they're driving it. They're liable to have a car that don't run worth a flip, right? Because they're using summer gas in a winter car. I mean, you know what I mean? So the gasoline changes formulation in the winter. And it's not quite so much in this part of the country because it doesn't get that cold here, right? So anyway, I mean, I don't know what the percentage of the stuff they do, like, I mean, down here. Incidentally, we're now producing 1 million barrels a day more oil than we're using. And they're running out of places to store it. Did you know that? We're producing a heck of a lot of oil. The fuel in a CNG vehicle is stored at pressures as high as 3,500 psi. The CNG is delivered to the mixer valve at a pressure of what? Half 0.5. 1/2 of 1 psi. Compressed natural gas refueling station pump is designed as a P24 filling station. And what does that mean? It refuels at a pressure of up to 2,400 psi. Now, if it's refueling at pressures up to 2,400 psi, and the pressure is stored as high as 3,500 psi, it sounds like there's about an 1,100 psi differential there, doesn't it? Which I expect you probably have some P35 stations out there too. I don't really know a lot about compressed natural gas. What rating of diesel fuel indicates how well an engine will start? Now, what is cetane?
It's not octane. It isn't.
Cetane is a clear, colorless fluid with perfect combustion qualities. And so it actually will combust absolutely perfectly. And so what they do is they take diesel fuel and they compare it to cetane. They say, okay, cetane, since it's perfect, we're going to give it a grade of 100. And then they compare the diesel to the cetane and they see how it stacks up against the cetane. If it only runs 50%, is, you know, if it's only 50% is combustible or whatever, then it's you know, that's how they grade it, you know, for the most part. All right, let me see. The specific gravity of diesel fuel is measured in what?
API gravity.
Well, what's specific gravity anyway? What are they comparing it to? Water. Right? So it's going to be hydrometer units, right? Okay, a biodiesel blend that has 5% biodiesel in a conventional fuel is called, that's B5. Most diesel fuel is what grade?
2.
Grade 2. E-diesel fuel is mixed with, E-diesel is diesel fuel mixed with what additive?
Ethanol.
Everybody like that answer? Ethanol. And finally, which grade of diesel fuel is best suited for cold weather operation? Grade 1. What you're wanting there?
What was the value?
Huh?
A9.